All right. Hey, welcome back to the Go for CEO channel where we interview CEOs, founders, entrepreneurs, and intrapreneurs. And today is another special guest. All right. This gentleman, I've been able to build a relationship on what's called Clubhouse. And stay tuned because I'm coming out with a top 3 ways to succeed in Clubhouse. And make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, ladies and gentlemen, because it is the most powerful CEOs, founders, entrepreneurs that I can bring onto the table. These people are building from scratch to multi-million-dollar businesses, and Fredrick Douglas Bussey has graced the stage. My man, Fredrick, thank you so much for coming on the Go for CEO channel.
John, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, as I said, I've been getting a chance to get to know you over the last 35 days. We just had a marathon, right? And it actually is still going, but we had a marathon on Clubhouse, and we've been moderating together and just learning a little bit about each other, just from the words that we're sharing, right? The excess of knowledge that you've been bestowing on other people, and when they asked those questions on stage. But you own Icon Status, man. That's a cool and powerful name. So I always like to share, with our interviewees, why don't you tell us a little bit about the background of Icon Status, or even how you got to that point where you thought to yourself, man, this is a great business. Let's roll from there. So go, up to you.
So, well, thanks again for having me. That's a great question because I love origin stories. And I never really thought of the origin of my business as particularly sexy, but it is an evolution. I came from the music industry as a songwriter and producer. I always believed that I was going to be doing that for the rest of my life because I loved music, was passionate about it since the time I was a teenager. I actually grew up singing in the church with my siblings and my parents. So loved music, loved writing. And as I evolved in there, the music industry hit this snag in the 2000s, early 2000s, where it became increasingly difficult for people to be able to make money the way that it was before. There was a lot that was happening around digital, Napster and digital downloads and things of that nature. And so people were kind of trying to figure out how to progress forward. And I was still, grinding away. I loved making music, but I had the opportunity to switch sides and go from the creative side to the business side as an artist manager, and then became a marketing director at a label. And so as I was going through this evolution of what I was doing, eventually landed in doing publicity. I kind of backdoored into it. I was working with an artist that I was managing, and I did such a good job of pitching him to the publicity, to the publicist, that he decided he wanted to hire me. And so first I was like, well, I got a gig over here. I'm good. But it really turned into another opportunity. It turned me on to a whole other side of publicity and PR and marketing and things of that nature. And eventually I started to launch out and do my own. And I wanted to name it something that I felt like was powerful. So Icon Status came to be born. And then the evolution of that came about as I started doing PR, and as I started kind of gradually realizing I wanted to segue from PR to say I want to do more storytelling, more creative content and things like that, to doing marketing. And then realizing that I didn't have a deep love for the technical aspects of marketing. I love the psychology of it, influence, persuasion. And around that time, I began to discover that, hey, there's this thing called coaching, which is something that I realized I've always been doing. From the time that I was a teenager working at summer camp, and I was mentoring kids and working with people, and people would always come to me as an entrepreneur, because I've been an entrepreneur for 20 plus years. Even when I was in the music industry, as I was struggling to break in, I bought a commercial cleaning franchise. And so that was my entryway into entrepreneurship. And so learning things like that, I realized I could take that experience and help people who were just becoming entrepreneurs, people who were leading companies and growing their companies, that I could support them because my skill set really leaned in that direction. And the name of the company just helps to kind of focus our underlying mission, which is to help people dream bigger, be better, go further, and do more than they ever thought possible. That's my personal mission, and that's what I kind of infused into the company. And that's really where Icon Status was born, that we all have an icon, we all have greatness inside us, and that if we have the right support, the right focus, and the right frameworks, then we can create an iconic life, live a legendary life. That's the slogan. So
Love it, man. Icon status, right? It really puts it out there. And, it's such a love affair that you have with that name, right? With the recognition that you've been able to put it behind it. You were an entrepreneur, really what I love to call, right? Inside the music industry, you help a client out and boom, they give you that challenge like, hey, maybe you should be doing this, right? So
Mhm.
so tell us about those beginning stages, right? I always like to talk about that first 90 days, 6 months, a year. Tell us a little bit about the challenges or even just the increase of business that you started to walk into when you really launched Icon Status.
Yeah, so there was no increase when I launched. it was it was a challenge because I I left the publicist I was working with. He actually moved back to California. He was from Hollywood. He had moved to Atlanta, and that's how we connected. He was here for maybe about a year, then went back. And so I said, well, I'll just do this myself. I made connections, I made things or whatever, and it was a lot more difficult to find clients than I thought. Right. So I'm moonlighting doing that and doing other things as well. And as I evolved, I'm evolving going from PR, which is one specific type of communication, right, to understanding there's a blend as the digital landscape and social media is evolving and things of that nature. So it was understanding I've got to be able to sell, right? I've got to know who I'm really gonna target, who am I gonna be able to help. And so that whole evolution, the whole process is something that I really started being able to help people with now, understanding, it's one thing to launch a company. It's another thing to really make it a business and to make it viable, right? And so that was, those first few years actually were incredibly difficult, incredibly challenging. But I'm grateful for them because one, it kind of deepened my resilience. It helped me to really value and appreciate and have much more gratitude for the success that we're seeing now and the things that we're doing now moving forward. It's it's a powerful reminder that I can't take it for granted, and that there's so much more that I'm capable of, that people are capable of, and I can stand for them and with them in helping them to be more successful as they possibly want to be.
It's incredible, right? The journey that you get into, especially when you make that decision to kind of go on your own. So let's get a little nitty gritty, right? I like to talk about biz dev, right? Beginning stages of business. You
Hmm.
talked about it. Hey, the first year or two, boy, I got this one client, should be easy, right? He should refer me to more people, or maybe the thinking was like, I'm Fredrick Douglas Bussey, like I'm out here, I'm getting it happen. Icon status, it's rocking and rolling, right? But you got to
Hmm.
get the name out. You got to promote, you got to be able to network and out there. So tell us, a few of the activities that you did to biz dev when you started Icon Status those first couple of years.
Well, a few. So in Atlanta, especially at that time, there were a ton of events, right? And so really, you want to be on the scene. You got to be seen. You got to develop some notoriety and get your name out there. You want to work with different clients and clientele. Social media was still early in the stages. This is around 2011, 2010, 2011. So there's Twitter, right? And I remember actually the first time when I started working for the publicist, and he told me, "Hey, you need to get a Twitter account." I'm like, "What is a Twitter account?" He's like, "Well, just you post things." And so everybody was still kind of figuring that whole thing out, right? So I got a Twitter account and just trying to figure out how you can start to market yourself and network with people and things of that nature. And it's funny because I hadn't really thought about this in years, but the difference between what we can do now, even like how we met on Clubhouse
Mhm.
versus that landscape there where you're really getting out there and pounding the pavement, it really it really was a much more one-on-one type of deal. It was me printing business cards and going to these different events and actually networking and handing people my card and saying, having conversations and listening, learning how to get better at networking, learning how to create a relationship out of thin air. Those are the things that it required. It was going out 3, 4 times a night. I mean, a week. Multiple events a night sometimes. Trying to be in the place and figure out how you can add value to people, to be able to sell them and on the fact that you can help them to grow their career. Because in essence, everybody in the entertainment industry has this dream, right? Whether it's fashion, music, film, whatever the case may be, TV, they all want to be something else, something more. And so you got to be able to position yourself to help them to do that. And so it's about having that conversation, going to lunches, going to coffee, having breakfast, those types of things, scratching and scrounging and being able to pull that up and to gradually figure out how do I evolve this thing so I create my own particular niche so people see me as something that is valuable. There was a whole lot of faking it till you make it back then.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt, no doubt. And that was actually the next question, right? It goes from business development, the networking, the trying to understand your avatar and who your client is, and how do you position yourself as the value add,
Mhm.
to then funding, right? Funding is a big deal. So tell us a little bit about, do you feel like you were prepared to make that move? Meaning like you had 6 to 12 months of assets to be able to, kind of pay all your bills? Or I think I overheard you say you had some things that you were kind of hustling on the side too, just to maybe scrap some money up. And then as you got that next client, bill them out. So tell us a little bit about that, kind of that journey of funding your business and starting to learn cash flow management and those things.
So yes and no. That's a great question.
Mhm.
When I moved to Atlanta in '07, this is February of '07, I actually had been working on the music when I was living in Alabama, out of college, right? So there was a group of us, a production company that we had. We're writing songs. We have artists that we're promoting, and we're starting to get some notoriety. I remember there was this one young lady that we were working with. We did some songs on her. We put up a MySpace page, and within 2 days, we had a meeting with a couple of record labels here in Atlanta. And so we were starting to make some noise, but it's hard to do that when you're 3 hours away in the middle of nowhere, so to speak. And so we gradually made that shift to Atlanta as a crew, one by one. But the thing was, I had my commercial cleaning company, my franchise in Alabama. That was my thing, and it allowed me the flexibility, so I didn't have a 9 to 5, right? So a lot of times I was going to the studio, and then I would leave there at 2, 3 in the morning, and I would go and knock out some jobs. And gradually, I was able to build up my business to where I had a supervisor, and he was working for me. So that's what actually gave me the freedom to move to Atlanta. So I had residual income coming from that business. And so that allowed me to kind of live, if you will, and be able to pay some bills. But I was still scrounging it. I moved in with my aunt. I was living in her basement, and I was there for a year, over a year or so, because I was just basically trying to figure things out. As my son comes in to ask me to open a water bottle. There you go.
Oh,
All right.
good. What's
So
his name?
my son's name is Sire.
Sire. All
Yeah.
right. That's a
Yeah.
really cool, unique name.
Yeah,
Is
as you
that
can,
any specific meaning?
yeah. So his full name is Sire Cohen Emmanuel,
Okay.
um, and so it just means royal priest.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
They caught the manual, so biblical, I'm assuming, right? So
Yes.
nice.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Sorry to divert you, but it's always cool to see the kids too. Um, so yeah, so you were challenged by the move, but you were also strategic, right, about having someone in place, right, with your commercial cleaning business, right, which is a lot of things that Go for CEO channel, community, you could learn from, right. The only way to really kind of create a real business, right, even away from a solopreneur type business, is
Mhm.
to have that next level of management, right. You start to have that effect of being able to share your skill set with someone else, and then
Mhm.
that allowed Fredrick to be able to move out to Atlanta, pursue some of the other dreams, and keep an eye on that business. So go
Yeah.
ahead, Fredrick. Go and kind of share with us, I guess, what area of funding did you start to realize either through cash flow, through the other business that was coming in? Were you robbing Peter to pay Paul type of thing right at the beginning, at least? Tell us a little bit about that story, just because I think it's so relevant to being able to start something new, but having had something that was pretty prominent.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I was definitely robbing Peter for sure. And so, and interestingly, this is the thing too. Like, I know a lot of people are hustlepreneurs, if you will,
Mhm.
these days. And I think you have to be in a sense. I think you have to keep your eye on the ball. For me, at the time, music was the primary goal. I was like, I want to do whatever it takes to make this happen. And interesting, when I moved to Atlanta, I was thinking, I've got the business here. Let me get a job, right? That way I've got this steady paycheck. I can just stack some cash, and then I've got some options to be able to do some things. I was getting a little bit older. I'm thinking about marriage in the future. I just want to position myself and to be able to put the business, at the time, music was the business, but later Icon Status. And so I even started I started a window washing company
Mm.
because it was able to be able to generate cash very quickly, right? So I could do that. I could do cash jobs, and it would be able to stack the money and things of that nature. And time wise, I was earning, $40 an hour in its essence. So it was a great way to be able to do that without having the have the flexibility to do what I wanted to do. So I was not afraid of hard work in any way, shape, or form. And it was much the same process. So if you want to talk about it as funding, I was beating the pavement. I would walk in and ask somebody, hey, let's speak to the manager. I give them a quote for cleaning the windows. And it was a yes or no process. We get started, I add them to my schedule, and we keep it going. So I built up a nice little route, and that was another way to kind of fund that for a couple of years, additional cash flow when I, was a little low. And so that allowed me to have that flexibility. Um, Sometimes I'd be hoping that I didn't see a potential client or somebody when I was cleaning windows. Like, this guy's not a PR, but that was the game. And I think that really you can't be too proud. If you have a vision, you got to be willing to invest in it and to fund it. Sometimes that means through a job. Sometimes that means through a side hustle or side gig or whatever the case may be. There's all different types of ways to generate that income now. I think it just has to be focused on how you're going to monetize it, how you're going to reinvest it into your business, and being clear on the outcome that you want to be able to create. That's a skill set that, I'm sure many other CEOs talk about that, but really it's about having that vision. And a lot of times when you're starting out, it's very difficult to maintain that because you're so deep in the weeds. But if you can be clear on where you're going, then it pays off in the end, in the long run.
It truly is, right? You start to see ways that the funds can start coming in, but you're supplementing, you're strategizing, you're then picking some of those funds to be able to put into marketing or put into growth or put into back, even the other business. Maybe you borrowed right from it, so maybe paying it back as well to kind of grow that side. So neat. So you've taken us through a quick journey here, Fredrick, about being in the PR business. Being in the commercial cleaning business, understanding how to be flexible in that hustle, preneur side of things. But now you're a year or two into Icon Status, right? You start to really establish yourself. Here's where a lot of people still miss the ball, right? So tell us about, what did you start to do to position your operation and some of the ways that you put together maybe your standard operating procedures or things that really start to make things glue together, and you started to think to yourself, man, Icon Status really starting to grow and be able to be something for you.
Well, so there was a couple of things. One, I was not that wise at the time, right? I didn't understand. So, and here was the thing, because I had done it in my commercial cleaning company,
Hmm.
but because it was a franchise, it had been done for me. And so I still had to make the shift to creating those things myself. I had those things. I had systems and processes, but they weren't formalized. They weren't documented, right? And so me being able to realize, okay, I need to be able to hire other people. And in order to do that, I've got to be able to give them something, right? And so in that process of growing, I actually hit another wall. And for me, that wall was, what do I really want to do? You know, because there was that, this is where the resilience, but also the clarity comes in. Because when you're not clear about why you're doing what you're doing, and actually I skipped a step, because I started Icon Status, and then before I did that, I actually I became a partner in a PR firm. So myself and several other guys joined together. So that was one of the ways where I realized, okay, I need to link up with some other people to create some more leverage. And that was a great way to be able to start building that 6-figure income and start putting those processes. And that was actually beneficial for me because I was able to learn from them. Some of them had more corporate backgrounds. Another guy already had a PR firm as well. So we were able to take some of the pieces, and I was able to see how we can link those together. And I could play my role because I did the social media marketing and directing in that regard and building the content. But it allowed me to be able to see how the whole thing could run. And so when I eventually left that situation about 2.5, 3 years later, I was able to take those things, and then begin to figure out how I wanted to mold that into my own company as well. So that was a really educational piece for me. Again, not being too proud. Not a lot of people want to be the boss, but sometimes you have to be willing to say, okay, there's some things I don't know. Right? Where do I get that from? And again, this was even ahead of me understanding that there were coaches out there who could help you to understand these things. Right?
Mm.
So that was part of the process, just kind of figuring all that out.
And look, you made some investments, right? You knew that uh, time plus investment equals opportunity that grows into something, right?
Hmm.
And that's what you did, right? You put together that partnership. Then you had this other things that you were doing, even even being creative about how to get some extra funds in there with the cleaning of the windows, right? Because you had that commercial cleaning background. Then you have this business back in Alabama that's flourishing and doing its thing, but you're checking in on it. Man, I love the story, because I think this isn't the super polished story, right? Hey, Fredrick went to school. He then, worked somewhere and he got inspired and he went into icon status. You really have some twists and turns, some resiliency that you talk about. And really, I think a lot of people, if you are the Go for CEO channel community, take a listen to what Fredrick just said the last 5-10 minutes and understand kind of how he developed his mind and be able to grow his business. Because now we got a guy that is super smooth, silky with his voice, right? Is I watched some of your reels on Instagram. I mean, it looks like you've been doing this for 20 years, my man. So tell us a little about now how you start to transition and how you start to see client after client after client succeeding with your services, and you start to the last 2-3 years really ramp up to where you're at now.
So let me take you back for half a second. So I I was before I joined the PR firm, actually in the midst of me launching my own PR firm, there was this bump in the road where I actually lost my business in Alabama
Mm,
because the guy that was managing he was managing the business while I was gone, and he'd been managing it for a couple of years. So we had a great relationship. He was great, but he decided he wanted to go and do something else, right? So now I no longer had a manager. So there was nobody else that I put in place. I just kind of kept the people running, and I would just go check on my business a little bit more frequently. Ended up losing that business. And what was weird was there was this time when the publicist left. So I lost my job. I lost my business, and my car got repoed all in the same week. And a few days before it got repoed, I almost had it was hydroplaning down a mountainside on my way to Alabama, where I thought I was going to end up getting killed twice. I almost got T-boned twice, ended up in a ditch. Um, so that's a whole other story. But all this happened in the space of a week. The reason why I bring that up is because it led to me eventually getting this car from a friend of mine. I didn't have the money at the time to get the car. So what he did, he was in a multi-level marketing company business. He said, well, just join this business and I'll let you get the car. So basically I did that. The great thing about that happened was they started sending these success magazines with these CDs on the back with Darren Hardy and Tony Robbins and Jim Rohn and all these people. And so they're starting to feed this information to me. So I got another job. I'm driving this car, popping the CDs in, I'm listening to the CDs, and it's setting my head on fire. So all this information is coming, and it's like all these possibilities start opening up for me. And so much of that foundation, which people had known about for years, they've been reading the books, but I had no idea this industry even existed, right? And so now the things that I'm doing, as I see all these coaches and gurus and internet marketers and all these courses that are available now, that information wasn't so readily available back then in the same way, right? You had to go and buy those CDs and things of that nature. And so that process began a 14, 15-year journey for me of personal development, of growth, of understanding wealth, of understanding sales and marketing in a way that I didn't really understand it before. And being able to understand, okay, if I want to be able to build my business, I've got to have sales skills. I've got to understand my ideal client. I've got to understand how I can position myself in a unique way, offering unique value to be able to help people to get their ideal outcome, right? All these things that sound like, regular business speak to most people now was things that were foreign to me. And realizing that for a lot of people, it still is foreign. There are certain concepts that nobody knows everything, and there are certain gaps. And so for me, that was really part of the journey, even till now, right? Really being able to start putting all those pieces together and saying, okay, as I moved into the coaching and consulting industry, to that side of the business, starting to put together all these different pieces of things I've been using before, and to really be able to go out and find clients, really be able to start implementing strategies and sales and systems, and and being clearer and clearer on my vision, and then understanding that I have to be able to turn around and help other people do that as well, right? So it's like coaching is like running a business for other people, like running multiple businesses at once, vicariously through others, but then taking those same lessons that you're teaching others and then taking them internally as well,
Mhm.
and reapplying them. And so that's why I love it so much, because I get to learn and I get to co-create with my clients, with getting their ideal results. And then some really cool things happen along the way. The light goes on in their eyes, and then checks come in, business starts happening, transformations occur, and people start getting freedom in their lives. They get their time back, and they get joy and peace out of what they're doing now. So I experienced that through them, and I get it myself. So it's pretty cool.
That is an incredible journey. And, you're making me reflect. I've done about almost 75 of these interviews, and every single one of them has such a unique journey, right? And thank you for being vulnerable and sharing kind of the ups and downs, the realities of what happens as an entrepreneur, how you go from being an entrepreneur to a solopreneur to a business owner to then maybe getting knocked down a couple times and all that type of stuff, right? It's really raw and real, and like you've talked about a couple times, it's really about resiliency, right? And sharing that aspect of it. So, as we kind of wind down the interview here, Fredrick, just so you know, we'd love to have you back on every 6 to 12 months, see the journey of icon status, where you're going next, what you're doing. So hopefully you'll grace us with being able to come back maybe at the end of this year, and we build a tribe behind every single interviewee, right? And you as a business owner. So one of the last few questions that we have is, C is for client experience, E is for employee engagement, and O is for operational excellence. We've touched on a little bit of some of that, but I want to be able to give the audience, what you do to kind of make that value add proposition for client experience. So go ahead and take it away. What is it that you believe Icon Status brings for client experience?
I love that question because it's really the thing that sets apart great businesses from the good ones, the mediocre ones, the ones that are going to fail. And I think increasingly in this world, we're seeing this division, right? This separation, that it's possible for one business to own the majority of the market. And a lot of times we call it monopolies, right? But I have a word that I use called singularity. And a singularity is just like the essence of a thing, right? The essence of greatness. And the companies that have that singularity are the ones that stand out, that become iconic, right? And that is what we're striving for. You are striving to create a singular experience for your clients. That's what we're focused on doing. Understanding what it is that they want, helping them to get more and more clear, and then create the ultimate level of possibility for them, right? Because no matter who we are, in many ways we have a ceiling on what we think is possible for ourselves and for our business. And so when you can open up that world for people, right, and show them, hey, you're great, you have greatness inside you. You're beating yourself up because you think that you're not able to hit your level of capacity, right? That you're not able to surpass what other people have told you would never be able to do, right? And so now you're no longer running away from something, you're running towards it, right? and towards this big future, right? So really it's about helping to create that big vision, right? In a new way, to infuse the joy and the power back into that. And I don't want it to sound fluffy, right? But because there is a framework for doing that. And it's really about asking the right questions to help them get clear, but supporting them in a way that helps them understand, even on the consulting side, right? That there are a lot of problems and things that we take for granted that just have to be, right? Well, business is hard sometimes, or life is a struggle, or things like that. And it's really sometimes asking the question, well, what if it didn't have to be? What would it take to be able to make this effortless and seamless and powerful as it possibly could be, right? And when you can really lean into that possibility, that's where human ingenuity and divine or universal magic can kind of happen, right? Those things can converge, and you start seeing things like an iPod, or you start seeing things like an Amazon, or you start seeing things like a Google, right? With a simple page, a page so simple that when they tested it, people would just sit there waiting for the rest of the page to load, right? So when you start creating that sort of a framework, you start being able to replicate that experience at scale, because you're really diving into what is possible. What's the highest level possible thing that we can create for people that allows them to have this glorious, joyful experience, right? Surprise and delight. And that's really what we're up to with Icon Status. It's about helping every client to be able to see the upper realm of possibility and beyond.
Incredible, incredible, man. What a client experience it must be, right? To be able to join your team, work with your team, and be able to grow with your team as far as building those levels of improvement, right? So the next question is E in the CEO mindset is employee engagement. I know that we didn't go into kind of scaling, so maybe we'll do it next time. But either if you have independent contractors or employees within Icon Status, tell us a little bit about maybe 30 seconds on employee engagement and how you look at it as far as being able to bring that team together and how they, follow your leadership.
Yeah, one of the things I love to talk about, especially is really, this is around leadership, and I love talking about leadership as well. It's learning to lead yourself and then learning to lead others. And leading yourself means having integrity in terms of your own values, knowing who you are and what you're up to in the world, and how you can establish a framework for becoming the best version and showing up as the best version of yourself every day, right? If I can do that for myself, I can fuse those values into my company. And then everybody that comes along as a team member is somebody that I want to be able to empower to do the exact same thing. So if I'm hiring a graphic designer, or if I'm hiring a social media manager, or if I'm hiring somebody who is going to work with my systems and processes, I want somebody who has those values. They strive to serve others. They strive to show up powerfully, to be as creative as possible. They don't see barriers or boundaries for their limitations of their skill sets, what's possible. They have a growth mindset. And so that's what I work on for myself and for my company and anyone who else works with us. And so it becomes a synergy of leader, team, and clients, so that wherever you are, you're aligned and everybody is working with as little friction as possible to be able to create greatness in everything that we do.
Boom. We should just end the interview there. That was powerful. I love it. I love it. Right. It's like a mic drop moment. So, but I do have to ask one more question, right? So
You
the
got it.
operational excellence, like, I know that you kind of shared this part of the story where you started to understand like, hey, the commercial cleaning business kind of gave you a framework because it was a franchise. So it lined you up, put you on the guardrails.
Mhm.
But then also when you started creating Icon Status, you really had to kind of decipher it yourself, right? So maybe 30 seconds on operational excellence for Icon Status.
For me, operational excellence is really simple. I suck at operations.
All right.
And I'm clear on that. And so I get people in place that love it, right? They love those details. Um, and the funny thing about me is that I will get bogged down in details sometimes, and I'll try and make it too perfect. And so that will actually get in the way of making things happen the way that it should. So for me, it's about getting those people in place that love it, right? My zone of genius is about communication and building relationships. And so I just search for people who have that particular gift. And I just want to be able to lock them in, but I want to be able to lock arms with them to be able to create great things. So I create the vision and they create the executable steps to get us there. And that's where the teamwork really works. So for me, operationally is like getting the right people, getting the heck out the way.
Sweet, sweet. I mean, that you said it right on, right? Knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, surrounding yourself with the right team creates an iconic presence and an icon status, right? So I love it. I love it. So, hey, I know due to time, we do have to get going, but why don't you leave us with maybe, 20 seconds of what you would love to share with the Gopher CEO community moving forward. We'd love to have you on, obviously 6 to 12 months from now. Follow the journey of icon status, Fredrick Douglas Bussey, and where you're headed. So, what's some final words in your that you would like to share?
Thanks for that, John. And thanks again for having me. One of the things I would like to share, you can see in the back, that that's my book, Breaking Orbit, Rip Out of the Regular by Unearthing the Power Within. That book was birthed out of a time of turmoil for me when I was really trying to figure out things. I had just left the PR firm. And I started to try to discover what was unique and powerful about me. What was my vision for the world going to be? And as in essence, out of that book came the ability to discover what your gift is, right? What is your unique capacity to impact the world in a powerful way? And out of that came 3 laws of giftedness for me, that if people can tap into that, it can transform their lives and they can be powerful leaders, powerful creatives, powerful entrepreneurs in whatever they want to do. And it's real simple. The first law of giftedness says that every person is created with a special, unique, and powerful gift. The second law says that every gift has a purpose. We don't have to chase it. We don't have to create it. We don't have to build it. It's already in us, right? And the third law of giftedness was my favorite, which says that no gift can fail at the purpose for which it was created, right? It's the same as in anything in your room. It was all created with a purpose. Everything in nature has a purpose. Birds always fly. Wind always blows. Water always flows. The sun always shines. You will not fail at your purpose because that's why you were created. And so when we remove the possibility of failure and know that all we have to do is show up as we were intended to, as we were created to, then anything is possible for us. You will not fail.
Woo! I'm on fire. All right. Well, hey, thanks so much, Fredrick. Appreciate that last, vision and the way you cast it out there, my man. So excited to have you on the Gopher CEO channel. Thank you so much for adding to the community. I know, ladies and gentlemen, leave a comment for Fredrick. I know he'll be engaged. He'll answer back. We're going to leave a little bit of information in the description, and we're looking forward to having him back also in 6 to 12 months. So check us out on Clubhouse. He's Fredrick Douglas Bussey. I am John the Bomb on Clubhouse, and check us out in the whatever it takes to what it takes to run a $1 million business. A great forum where Fredrick and I really kind of pour into business owners and entrepreneurs. So thanks again, Fredrick. Appreciate you having on, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
It was a pleasure, John. Good to see you again, man.
Take care.
Take care.